really excited today to be joined by Jonathan Kron, who is the CEO of BloodGPT. When we think about AI from, like the movies in the 90s and early 2000s, this is what I imagined, a solution where, you give your blood work results and doctors, labs, individual patients can get insights instantly in terms of, hey, this is where you're at and this was where you should be going. And so he is doing exactly that at BloodGPT. So excited to have you on today.
Yeah, really nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to chatting and exploring both Blood GPT, but lots of things healthcare wise.
Absolutely. So much going on. Just to kind of give everyone and myself context, can you give me a little bit of background on kind of your career up until this point and when you joined Blood GPT, and then we can kind of dive into that.
Absolutely. So I've been in healthcare since effectively 2002, 2003. Originally as a lawyer, I'm Irish. I'm based in London, living and working here. I originally worked in a big city law firm. Did soccer stadium deals, which was fun, but then did a big hospital project, and we built 10, 11 elective care centres co-located with the public sector, with the NHS here in the UK. That was in the early noughties. And the idea there was to reduce waiting lists, introduce new technology, IT, and infrastructure, new modern infrastructure, physical bills. And it was quite controversial at the time, but it's kind of where I cut my teeth on healthcare as a lawyer. I left about a year after that, and I got approached by the same people that were on the opposite side of the negotiating table when I was a lawyer, saying, "I believe you've set up a healthcare advisory business. We would love to get you involved. We have loads of projects that are struggling, can't get them financial close, can't get facilities built. Would I come in and take a look?" And that's really where I kind of fully threw myself into full-time healthcare related work. And I've run a healthcare advisory business since then, but done a number of broad spectrum things along the way, from advising, the NHS and government here in the UK, developing lots of hospitals. We actually did everything from helping to put the deals together for these elective care centres, troubleshoot the ones that were struggling to get to a financial close. We then put in teams to mobilise the build and the service design and delivery of those services from private sector into the public sector. And then when some of them were struggling to perform and deliver and meet the contract, I went back to my kind of legal background and used the contract to actually get them to renegotiate the terms, leverage them, exit them out of the contracts, and so on. So we did the full life cycle and built teams of experts that had all the expertise to do that. After that, I went on and advised some. We did community hospitals as well, actually, that full hospitals. We also did advice some PE funds about their investments, their assets, how to leverage their assets, how to do bolt-ons. Worked with actually Dignity Health, the health system in the US, which is no longer called Dignity Health. I know it's merged and rebranded. And also did some startups along the way as well, including my own digi-physical solution back in 2019, 2020. And that was an interesting ride through the COVID whole experience of, but we were trying to build and fit out during COVID. So it wasn't as if we were already delivering services during COVID. So it was quite a ride for that one, but a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. No, it seems like you've kind of gone through all types of aspects of healthcare from one side to the other. And I guess my next question, and I know you were going to kind of continue, so I do want you to continue, but kind of was when did AI in general kind of come onto your radar of like, oh, this is something that is going to change healthcare? Was it, early on? Was it more recently? And then I'll kind of let you give your intro into how you got into Blood GPT.
I'd probably be honest and say more recently. Obviously, there's always been a tech side to even the physical solutions that we were doing. So fitting out clinics. The startup that I referred to, which was called Med24, which was a little bit before ahead of its time here for the UK. The idea was to be it was a private membership model of GP, MD led, but had preventative care, wellness checks, etc. And that was, we started thinking about that in late 2016, 2017, raised money, opened 2020 actually in the end because of delays with COVID and so on. And trying to find the IT solution for that was really frustrating because I felt as if there was no really good platforms that were going to be like our mini EHR because we were just initially starting off with one clinic. The idea was to expand physical clinics and the digital platform, but to be able to provide a service that both in person, face to face, and online could have a similar level of service and experience, that there was a continuum of care, whether you were physical or digital, and it all spoke to each other and so on. So finding that solution was really tricky. And we did engage with providers. We looked at different solutions, but nothing was really smooth. And I think post that, I was doing advisory work, some health tech and different things, some interesting products, some med tech, various different stuff. And then, a couple of years ago, AI started to come, and I was looking at it even from a personal point of view. In fact, there was a couple of people working for me. They were a little bit more cutting edge than I was, and they started talking about some of these tools, and then you start experimenting them, and then you realize actually the impact they could have within the healthcare space. And even thinking, well, if I had had some things like this during the startup of Med24, how different would that experience have been, and how much quicker progress we could have made, and the service model we could have offered people. So yeah, but generally, I would say, AI has been around for a long time, a lot longer than most of us know. I certainly wasn't looking at it then, but it's really just been the last year or two that I've been looking at it. Um,
Yeah, very cool. I'm a nerd about AI, and I'll look at things and it's like, oh yeah, they've been talking about AI since the 50s and 60s and
right.
been doing research on it. And so at first glance, like in a casual conversation, you might be like, oh, it's 5 years old and whatnot. But like you said, it's been around for a long time. But the exciting things and the actual rollout of it, where it's going to impact your life and my life, is finally happening now. So
Yeah.
kind of shifting the conversation to BloodGPT, I get in the elevator
Mm,
with you. You tell me you're the CEO and ask you, what do you all do? Give
yeah.
me the quick elevator pitch of what you all do.
Sure. So, the principle is very simple, and it wasn't my initial idea. There was two original co-founders who are still co-founders with me. We uh, the idea is to take lab reports, whether it's blood, urine, allergy panels, serum, and we are expanding the realm of what we can interpret. And it's to take those extracts, which you normally receive in a flat PDF, a non-dynamic flat PDF, black and white, maybe a bit of color, which has been the most exciting thing that's come into them over the last couple of years. And that's how you get it. Whereas there's a lot of limitations in relation to that. And we are so used to having information and data at our fingertips today. The idea of being able to see your outputs, be able to track and measure your outputs, be able to interrogate, your data yourself as a patient in the first instance, is something that BloodGPT offers. And therefore, when I first was introduced, say June-ish 25, I found it very appealing because I had experience where in trying to monitor my own blood tests over years, I built this spreadsheet to try and manage all of that. But the reality is it just didn't work. And it didn't work because the terminology used to refer to blood markers are different depending on what labs you go to, what countries you're in, etc. The measurement units are different across every different lab because everybody calibrates, uses different equipment and calibrates their equipment as they see fit as lab technicians and so on. And therefore, the ability to do all of that yourself was very, very difficult. BloodGPT, when I first learned about it, that's exactly what they were doing in their first kind of iteration. They could deal with different measurement units, they could deal with different terminologies, and they could track and map the trends across markers if they're appearing across multiple reports. To see that on screen in a portal dynamically under your patient profile or your profile, for me, was very exciting, and it solved a personal challenge that I had and a frustration that I had. And that's kind of what I was like, I really would love to get involved and help. And I started advising them in June 25. Now, obviously, like anything, it is built on AI with engineering infrastructure around it, tech infrastructure around it, and things are moving very quickly. So we, as a product and a platform, has evolved very, very quickly, and it's continuing to evolve, because if we don't evolve, we'll get left behind because things are moving so fast. And then September time, or late August, September time, I was asked by two original co-founders if I'd be interested in running the business and stepping into that kind of CEO role, because they both had built other businesses, exited some, had other commitments, and also One is really an AI engineer, but he wants to be the CTO and develop a product and focus on that side of it, which is his passion and interest and so on. So yeah, so we kind of had that discussion, agreed to do that, and it's been really exciting, ever since. And there's a lot of things happening, a lot to juggle, like any young startup. And I think when you're a startup in the tech and AI space, there's more to juggle because it's a ferociously fast developing space to be working in. But a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, yeah, and especially now with AI and in particular what you guys are developing, there's no one day where you're like, okay, we have the final product. When the minute you have that, there's like 10 other companies or innovations or things that you're going to have to work on. In terms
Yeah.
of where you all are you all launched with health systems currently, with particular labs, with direct to consumer services in various countries? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So when I first got involved, they'd already just launched a B2C platform. It had really had a take up in Germany in particular as the B2C, and we had within 24, 48 hours, a couple of thousand users, subscribers. And we did that to get kind of real feedback from actual users that would be using it and so on. And that's been great. And we haven't really pushed or developed the B2C platform. We haven't done any direct marketing or anything of that really, because that hasn't really been the focus. The focus has really been to build a B2B platform at enterprise level. We're in this space where we're talking about the amount of every kind of pathway in clinical decision, give or take. I mean, you're the doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm a lawyer by background, but they all start really with some type of lab report of some description. That's where everything starts, and that's where you go back to check. Has progress been made, or is the patient improving? What are the readings now? And therefore, the idea of starting off in that space at the beginning of a pathway, you can provide a service to the patients, very quickly, and that's what the B2C was starting off doing. But the volume of lab tests that are done on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis in all health systems around the world is colossal, and it's growing and has grown exponentially since COVID, because now the ability to test at home, to get a kit sent to you at home, and either do a test yourself, or there's even pathology services that will visit people in their homes. The results, the test then goes back to a laboratory, and there's an output. And it's that output that we are particularly interested in doing. Now, if the output comes back to the individual, so that maybe a consumer that bought something off a platform, then they can always upload the result themselves, either a PDF or an image. We read it, the OCR reads it, interprets it, and so on. However, that's just the consumer level. What we really want to be doing is integrated directly into the laboratory systems, into the LISs, into the health systems or the electronic health records, and or the clinical platforms. I think one of the unique things about BloodGPT, which appealed to me and I think is appealing to a lot of people, is that there's some amazing tech out there. There's amazing apps out there, and some very sexy and cool B2C apps. Now, the challenge with some of these apps is that they are standalone. They are isolated, they are branded, and they don't want to, or they don't integrate within other wider systems. And generally, that is a problem, I believe, in the health system. I don't want 10, 12, 15 health related and wellness related apps to manage myself. That's an awful lot of work and so on. There are some integrators like Apple Health and other platforms that will do a certain amount of integration of that, but I don't want that. What we're finding is that laboratories, health systems, clinical platforms of one description or another like us, because we will API integrate, we can pull HL7 files, we have FHIR integration as well, and therefore medical grade and what the information we read, but also we will white label. So we can actually be part of the pathway of any system. We don't want to cause a friction. We don't want to be another, click that somebody has to do. We want to make it as seamless as possible. So one of the first things we try to work out with clients that we're talking to or potential clients is, what is your pathway? What is the flow of I'm going to even call the flow of activities, from when a test is ordered, who orders the test, how is the test ordered, is it consumer or patient driven, is it clinician driven, what is that pathway, where is the test taken, where does it go to, and where does it come back? Now, we don't need to get involved in all that detail, but we do like to understand the pathway, because we can fit in, hopefully, at the most frictionless place that makes sense, because we want to make it easy for obviously the patient and the consumer, but also very much so for the clinician. Clinicians request a ferocious amount of tests on a daily, weekly basis for their patients. I'm sure in the ER you're experiencing all the time. How quick can you get the results? How quick can you get a test done? How quick can you get the results? So we want to make it as easy as possible. And we find, and the data shows, that clinicians do spend a lot of time looking at reports, trying to quickly extract the information. Often it's an extraction and it's a quick communication, either to the patient or a family member of the patient, depending, or to another clinician. Well, if you have a platform that actually can communicate it through secure links, that can trend analyze it, and you can see the changes that are going on, it makes it all much secure, and it also provides a lot of efficiency. So we have a little toggle on our platform that you can choose, and it'll pull up all the abnormal results right to the top of the screen. So you see them straight away. Now, not only is that helpful to a patient, obviously, what to focus on, what to read and try and understand, but if you think about it for a clinician, instead of running through 30 biomarkers, 50, 80, 100, whatever might be in the lab report, and sitting under that patient profile, you can see those abnormal ones straight away. Now, of course, they're a clinician. They should take responsibility. We are an interpretation and education tool. We're not a medical device, and we can come on to that in a bit more detail, later. But the ability to streamline that, to help the clinician not to do the job, just to get the right stuff in front of their eyes for them to more efficiently see what's going on. We've also recently, on request of clinicians, created the summary and the insights section of the platform, completely editable. So although the platform and the AI can give you an interpretation, can make suggestions and so on, and it does all of that at a summary level, as well as detail, actually the clinician can edit all of that as to what the clinician wants it to say, or the clinician might know more context, that is human context, that is relationship context, that AI, and there's a lot of discussion and debate out there at the moment about this kind of gray area that AI won't necessarily be able to read and understand, and therefore the clinician can edit and give their opinion about what's going on. So all of that, I think, is really, really powerful and helpful. So we try to create a time saving, because there's so much pressure on doctors, and there's so much budget constraints and so on. So anything that you can do that is even incremental to take some pressure off, to keep the process moving and be smooth, is great. And there are so many different use cases that are arising, that we're seeing, that we are trying to address. I can't do them all, but we are certainly looking at them, and we will, get to them hopefully over time.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit so many important points there. Obviously have family members myself getting blood work, and usually the primary care doctor, like you said, on those black and white little PDFs will write, maybe like high cholesterol, eat less fatty foods. But like, what does that mean? And that's all the communication you get until you see them again in like 6 months or a year. Like you mentioned, that's not the doctor's fault. They are probably going through 100 of those reports. Can they write out a personalized, what does healthy mean? What does this type of cholesterol versus that cholesterol mean? I was playing with the kind of demos y'all have on your website, and the insight it gives, and the kind of detail it goes into that is particular for your number, is impressive. And so it's kind of the personalized care that we all wish we had. And we just haven't had because of, particularly in the United States, the constraints of, how many
Yeah,
patients each primary care doctor needs to see and how difficult it is. And then the other thing you pointed out on, which was very, kind of resonated with me, is how siloed everything is. So even for my
yeah,
personal blood work, right, I may switch doctors, or my doctor may switch the labs that they're using. And so I may have gone blood work through this lab last year, but a different lab this year. And then you're trying to compare
mm,
the results. And I literally have to log into two portals, put it side by side. And, like you said, maybe they are using a different type of measurement, or their normal abnormal scale is different. Now, I'm a physician, I can kind of get through a lot of that. But
right.
if you aren't, and you're just a consumer trying to trend your cholesterol or your A1C, that can be very difficult, to the point where you become frustrated and you say, you know what, I'll figure it out later, which is what we don't want people to be doing. So many kind of problems that you all are trying to solve that I think are very important.
Yeah, and there's different ways to look at it. We are, Western health systems are saying, public, it's yours, take responsibility for your health. It's great. We understand that. Why are they doing that? There's a lot of drivers for that. Part of it is the time and cost pressure in the system, etc. But if you want people to take responsibility for the health, you have to give them tools and access to their information, and that they should be, if they have to be responsible for it, they should be able to see it, be able to understand it, and so on. Again, we're not replacing clinicians, we're not replacing the experts. Of course, we're not, but we do want to give them tools to help them do that. And these tools need to get refined. There's no question about it. I mean, I think what BloodGPT does is fantastic, and it's improving all the time. And we are getting feedback. Give you a simple example. We're working with a clinic actually here in London, and they do a range of things. But one of the things that right early on they said to us, well, we do a lot of testing for women's health. And we want to look at, and again, I'm not a clinician, and you'll understand this better, and I might even get some of my terminology wrong, but they will do measurements. They're very particular about whether it's AM or PM testing, whether it's fasted tested or not, where it is on their cycle, the implications of that, etc., and reading it. So when we first built the Blood GPT, we couldn't account for all those things. We couldn't either read some of that information. It might have been in a PDF output if it was just being uploaded and being read. If we were pulling HL7 files, some of that information was there. So we've built now, with their support and with their kind of direction and input, the ability to take account of all of that information. Either if it's there, we can pull it and we can get it. If it's not there, we can ask the right questions to get it, because it's very, very relevant. In fact, we were in a conversation with them only yesterday, and another point they said is, after 50 going to 51, the range of readings for a testosterone score for a man changes, right? Certainly in the UK. Again, I don't know what it's like in the US. It changes, and therefore, can you account for that? And I'm saying, well, I don't know the answer to that yet, but I'll speak to the team. We will check that. And if we can't account for it, we have to find a solution to be able to account for that. So if you're doing a measurement of a test that is at 49 and your next test is at 51, well, you're not quite comparing apples and apples, because the range of measurement is different, because you've, gone past an age threshold, or what the general ranges are. How do we address all of these things? Now, this gets into detail, but it's very important to try and address these things. So therefore, when you are giving these tools to patients, that you can give them the right tools and the right information. It can be built on the right structure. And then it might probably is a question you're going to come to, but I feel it's a good lead time to do it. A lot of people say, well, can't the generic LLMs do this anyway? Can't you just upload a result or whatever else? Because we are built and we use generic LLMs, but we use them in a very specific way, with very structured, engineered instructions and questions and checks and double checks. And they can't, and they're not going to do some of the things that I've just said to you. Some of those examples about accounting for exactly AM, PM, menstrual cycle timeframes, the different ranges of age, et cetera, et cetera. These are some of the things that we can do, and we build into the back end of what we're interpreting and what we're looking for, and so on. So I think the fact that the generic LLMs have come out for like the healthcare related focused models is fantastic. And because we use those LLMs, it's actually fantastic for us, because it's based on stronger and better medical data all the time. That strengthens our position. But we are also LLM agnostic. We can move between LLMs. We use multiple LLMs at the same time. We can question, we can challenge. By doing all of that, we reduce hallucinations and as well, so that the accuracy gets tighter and tighter the more of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think some of these use cases that we are delving into help us refine what we do, help us differentiate ourselves from other players, and also just the general offering, and even the API offering that is going into healthcare businesses now from the larger platforms.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because, like you kind of alluded to, like, someone listening may be like, oh, so and so company released their health offering. Why wouldn't I just go with them? And it seems like, and just to kind of paraphrase to make sure I understood, that's going to make you stronger because they are obviously investing into their health offerings. And if you're building on top of that, it's going to make kind of your fundamental kind of foundation stronger, but then B, you guys are going beyond that to get into the intricacies of things like you mentioned, maybe AM cortisol versus PM cortisol or things of that nature. And then the third kind of thing that sets you apart is you're not stuck with one LLM. You can kind of get the best of each one of them. And so that's why you would be kind of even a better product for the patient and the provider than what these kind of out of the box health products may be from one of
Yeah.
these giants.
We believe so. I think there's other things to add on. I mean, you know, an API is just an API that connects. It doesn't have full integration and infrastructure and a UX or UI built around it that you might want. It doesn't white label it and integrate it, that it just sits within your existing, platform and system that you're using. How nice is it that if you've got a platform that a patient, a consumer is a member of or buys a product from, they send it off to the laboratory. The results go back to the platform. You as the user log into your platform to see your whole profile, see your results, and right there, branded of that platform, not our brand, but branded of that platform, you can see dynamically your results, and you can see it being compared to the test that you did with them 6 months ago, or whatever the case may be. And then you could share that securely with somebody. You could download a branded PDF and save it yourself, and so on. These are things that actually the smaller players, the startups like us, can build, can structure, can distinguish ourselves, can offer, providers, laboratories, online platforms, a service and a model and a solution that actually the big platforms, the big LLM infrastructure platforms, aren't doing, and are unlikely to do at this stage.
Yeah, makes sense. Kind of shifting gears a little, and this
Yeah,
is, I'm kind of a little nerdy, but I'm just curious about it. When it comes to the regulatory environment, so obviously you all are not a software as a medical device or anything like that, but when it does come to regulation, for example, in the US versus Europe versus maybe other parts of the world that you all have offerings in, can you tell me a little bit about that? Let's start with the US. What is the role of the FDA and what you're doing? Is there any role? Is there no role? And would love to learn a
yeah,
bit more about that and then maybe move on to Europe and then Middle East, maybe.
sure. Sure. So I think, of course, there's a role, and the regulators are there to make sure that anything that people like us, like a Blood GPT, is interfacing with health systems, with patients, and with personal identifiable data, we do it correctly. We do it in the right way. So, we are, from a data point of view, we're kind of GDPR and HIPAA compliant. We have to make sure we're doing that. We have SOC 2 Tier 1 right now. We're moving towards Tier 2. So, you put all those building blocks in place, and you constantly improve them, refine them until you get your certification, and you then maintain it and so on. Now, in relation to the FDA itself, yes, BloodGPT right now is an interpretation and a communication platform. We provide, educational insights, etc. We're not giving any diagnostics. We're not giving any advice whatsoever. And we have to be careful to make sure we aren't seen to be doing that either. So we have done an exercise of looking at our terminology, off our language, and even what you might put out from a comms point of view. You need to be aware of certain of these things. I'm not going to say we're doing it perfectly, but we certainly are trying to make sure that we don't do it. When you've got a business and team and lots of people working, getting everybody on the same page, using the right language does take effort. But we've done it and we're doing it. And in fact, we even use AI to build our own AI agent to actually sense check all of our communications to make sure we're not maybe picking up terminology that we shouldn't do. Now, that's where we are right now. BloodGPT has a beta version of a product where we go beyond just lab report interpretation. And we've already done another step, which we haven't talked about yet, but there's an option to be able to get dietary insights on the back of your lab reports already. Again, not regulated. But beyond that, we have a version where you actually can get disease identification on the back of your lab reports, medication recommendation, and treatment planning. Now, that is not a product that we've launched, and that would be a Class 2 medical device under FDA regulation. We would very much like to go down that route. We are doing a clinical validation project right now, processing 100,000 anonymized records, patient records, to be able to put them through the platform, that version of the platform, challenge it, check it, and so on, and use that as part of our our process to go down the FDA route. Now, we would do that both in the US, but we will also look at doing it in Europe and the UK as well, most likely in parallel or slightly staggered. You have to have your MDR in the US and MHRA, I think it is in the UK. So we will have to, do all of that to make sure. And I think, the goal is to go down that route, to try and provide, because we actually are holding back on what we're offering because we have a lot more functionality that's there, and a lot more ideas and the pipeline to develop things, but you have to be careful and not do it until you can do it. Now, there's obviously been new guidance that's come out from the FDA a week ago, in the US. I think, yeah, last week, I think it was, or was it the week before? Could have been the week before. And so, yes, so my colleagues have looked at that, and we are going through it legally to see, does that change anything in relation to our plans, what we would want to submit, how we need to do it? It strikes me that there's more flexibility, in relation to, what has come out. I don't know that because we are a software, that it's fundamentally different for us from the insights that have been shared with me so far. But we will look at that and watch that. And as I said, we're not ready to go down that route anyway. It's certainly at the earliest the second half of this year of 2026. But the idea of having a regulated product does obviously bring more scrutiny, more challenges, and so on, and more risk, potentially more liability. So you have to weigh those things up as a business as to what you do. And you also only want to do it if the accuracy is there. Because yes, it's a business, and of course you want to grow your business commercially, and you want to find returns for the business and for investors. But you also need to make sure that we are delivering a needed service, a solution for people, and something that benefits and certainly doesn't hinder in any way. So it's definitely an interesting space to be in. And then we have to think about, sorry, just to diversify, what else do we need to bring into the equation for us? Well, should we bring in wearables? Should we bring in real-time monitoring of information? Lab reports are moments in time when results are taken. Wearables are more, live, obviously in real time. Accuracy, then you can question about, some wearables, obviously increasing accuracy all the time, but that is one of the things that is questioned because there are averages that are taken and built into algorithms. So again, we're trying to see, over time and as we develop, what do we bring into the equation, and so on. Because we introduced, before the holidays, before Christmas, the ability to upload, not just reports, but actually wider medical information. So it could be doctor's letters, it could be other reports, it could be wellness reports, whatever it may be. And we are, so that gives you a richer context in which the patient profile, and when the AI does its work, can reach into and give you a richer and a deeper interpretation. And because it's looking at all the different elements to identify and interpret what's going on. We're constantly looking at that kind of functionality. What else can we do? So but we're almost like a mini EHR. I mean, as more medical information come in, it can be stored and it can be used for interpretation and insights. So again, like any early stage business, you're finding your way. You're also finding your way as to where the engagement comes. You as a clinician, as what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What would you use? What would you not use? You're not going to like all 100% of it. We know that. So what is it that works, that doesn't work, that's redundant? And we should be trying to refine, remove redundancies, make that product and the functionality that's built into it slicker and more efficient all the time, so that the usability, whether you're the clinician or whether you're the end user, the patient, the consumer, it is the right experience and giving you the right thing.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. One of the things you touched on is just the amount of data we have, right? Whether it's in our wearables or whether it's lab work or a variety of other data. And that's one of the biggest problems in healthcare, right? We have all this data. I'm sure there's tons of insights that we haven't even thought about, or that there's not the resources to kind of pull those insights from that. But being able to do that on a personal level obviously is very valuable. And then you kind of alluded to it and kind of works into my next question. So, from kind of my perspective, you all have three audiences, right? You have the clinicians, you have the labs essentially trying to integrate with them, and then the individual patient. Now, I know you're not doing a bunch of direct to consumer marketing or anything like that, but obviously the patient is important there as well. In terms of who is most excited about this and who sees this as, something that's really going to be of benefit, going to change things. Which one of those three groups would you say is kind of most interested, having the most conversations with you, and you're getting most traction with?
Um,
And maybe it's all
um,
three.
Yeah, so yeah, to a degree, it's all three, but
Yeah.
it's not as simple as that. But I'm going to answer the question as best I can. So I think what you find, and what I've experienced even through my career in healthcare, is that there are so many different perspectives and so many different approaches that are out there. So we have spoken to a number of different laboratories, and there are some that just think we would like to be able to provide a better interface, a better offering to our clients, whoever their clients might be. They could be hospital systems, they could be plugging into B2C platforms, whoever it may be. But I've also spoken to some labs and they're like, no, no, it's not for us to do this. This is not what we're going to do. And they don't want to have the conversation. And the reality is that's fine because every business is its own business and it has to decide what it wants to offer and wants to do. So in relation to that first kind of category, which I think you mentioned about laboratories, we get a mixed response in relation to it. But we are having conversation with some laboratories in Europe and North America, and they really would like to be able to provide this type of dynamic, branded interface. In fact, one conversation was, they provide certain specialist services into cancer hospitals, and therefore, patients are regularly testing very, very frequently, and so on. Well, they were like, we would like to be able to give a much better experience for the patients, their families, the clinicians about their results and their reports. Now, maybe not every patient wants that, so it is something for them to weigh up and how they manage the access to it and so on. But they would like to be able to do that and be able to show trend analysis and so on of all of these things. We had a conversation with a big system in another country. I won't name which country. And their response was, the laboratories will never want to do this. The pathologists are far too important. They wouldn't rely on tech in any way, and they need to be looking at it. And you won't make any inroads in this space. And again, you have to respect that if that's the position that they take, and so we respect that. And I think in relation to clinicians and hospital systems, it's varied. Hospital systems are big beasts. We don't know when you start a conversation with them what their tech solution and stack currently is, and therefore there can be some real challenges because depending on the legacy stuff that's built in there in relation to integration and what that might look like. And also they tend to be slower moving conversations for the obvious reasons that most people will talk about regarding hospital systems. However, clinicians that are involved in digital platforms, online pharmacies, wellness, longevity platforms, and so on, super engaged, really, really excited. What can they offer? And in fact, some of those conversations have already kind of driven, well, maybe, we need to be focused a bit more on the C side of things, the B2C, or certainly be pushing the B2B and straight into the C, because actually there's that space and the solutions that are people looking for, the care that people are having about their own health and to manage their own health and wellness has obviously grown and exploded over a number of years and continues to grow. It settles down and then new things come along and they do it. But again, as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, a lot of these things all start if you don't measure it. A lot of these kind of gurus say in whatever aspect of life, business or health or wellness, longevity, if you don't, and fitness, if you don't record it and measure it, how can you monitor it and how can you make improvements? And therefore, this is a tool that can help you do that. And it can help you do that in a few different ways. And therefore, we can tap into and have those conversations, and we are having those conversations, and they're quite exciting. And we're having those in the US and also in Europe and Eastern Europe right now. We already have a project in Africa, and we are exploring a few opportunities and discussions in South Africa. It's pretty broad, and I think that's part of it because I'm London based. Colleagues as part of the team are Cyprus and Polish based mainly. And then just through partnerships, people introduce you. So we've done some outreach. We've also had just a lot of inbound inquiries. And we also are open to putting in, almost distribution partnerships with even in certain regions or jurisdictions for the reasons you kind of said. Every country has a different regulatory, position. They have a different position in relation to their data, and putting data protection agreements in place everywhere. It takes time and effort, and you want to create a little bit of consistency, but there are different things to do. So we are doing that in a few countries right now with a few different projects and pilots. That's give or take, finalized three or four of them, a new three or four of them, and therefore, yes, you have to deal with the regional and jurisdictional regulations as they come. In some ways, having a partner in a country that might not be a big focus, because obviously the US and Europe generally are big focuses, but having a partner that, will take that responsibility and manage all of that is also, I think, a consideration that many a young startup might have because of just bandwidth and the ability to stay on top of that and manage all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone listening, I would encourage them to go to your website and kind of go through the demo and the sample and whatnot. It is very, visually appealing. You really get a picture for what you all are offering, and it's one of those things where, we're all patients. We all interact with the healthcare system on some way, either for preventive purposes or managing a disease or whatever the case may be. And when you see kind of how everything is laid out, just even from take all the fancy AI and everything away, just kind of how it's laid out, how you can trend things and whatnot, I think is very impressive. I guess my final question for you is going to be, we're at the beginning of 2026. What are like one or two things you hope to have achieved or gone to if we're having another conversation December of this year?
Um, yeah, so we have a vision of where we're trying to get to, and I think at every early stage business, what are you trying to do? You're trying to secure contracts, clients, revenue, and you're trying to secure investment. And which comes first? We need both at the same time. And so we are doing a small seed raise right now, about 1.5 million US. We are trying to get about half a dozen projects live and up and running. We have a really nice pipeline. I think I gave you the example of a conversation that had gone quiet for a number of weeks that then has come back online. And there's a few of those. I think time of year, December into January is tricky. But I think so where do we want to be December 2026? Well, we'd love to make sure obviously we've done our seed round, but also that we have I would love to say at least 3 to 6 contracts and projects running in the different categories of LISs, some type of clinics, health system platforms, and other types of longevity and wellness platforms. And I think if we have that or we have traction in relation to that, we are a volume game. So we want to be processing huge numbers of biomarkers on a monthly basis for clients, and that's what we'd like to do. So if we can hit some of the targets that we've got, then we would be well on our way to achieving some of that first year goals. I think one thing to say is that enterprise software takes time, changing people's behaviors, getting them bought in, especially when there's an awful lot of noise around in that AI world of, is there a bubble? Is there this? All these kind of things, new tech, new ideas that are coming out and so on. So there's a lot of noise. It's important for us to stay focused, and it's important for us to kind of convert the conversations we have and have the more conversations coming in and execute on them. So yeah, I'm hoping when we speak at the end of this year, we'll have some of those projects and contracts running. We have met some of the quality levels that we have set for ourselves of accuracy and results and uh, user satisfaction. And I would love to say that we also started the process of our medical device, class 2 medical device process. That would be really exciting because if we're doing that, we know we'll have made quite a lot of progress to get to that place.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to kind of see y'all's journey. Love what you have so far, and thanks so much for spending some time with me. And I look forward to catching up in a couple months, maybe end of this year.
That sounds great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. Awesome.